Hey everyone, thank you Alan and Brad. What an amazing conversation. I'm Jackson Andrews. I'm the managing director and co-founder of the Endeavor office in Louisville, Kentucky. Launched in 2015, we now support entrepreneurs across Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio, in particular in Louisville, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati. We are now supporting 45 plus entrepreneurs, which is crazy, entrepreneur-led companies across our early stage scale-up program, our Endeavor Selection as a Service program, and the 18 selected global Endeavor entrepreneurs that are driving job creation and building the future. Endeavor entrepreneur companies include Catalyst investments in SKU Vault, Listener, and App Harvest, which I'm sure you'll hear more about from Anna Mason, and high growth companies like El Toro, Handle, MXD, Behavior, Rabbit Hole, Edge Switcher, and so many more, all being built in Middle America. Up next, we have a really special panel that highlights one of Endeavor's most important values, giving back. At Endeavor, we believe that it is critical to give back and reinvest. Sometimes you just gotta write the check in order to achieve what we call the multiplier effect. Our next panelists embody that as they've gone from founders to funders. This panel includes Endeavor entrepreneurs turned Endeavor board members, investors in Endeavor Catalyst, and investors in Endeavor entrepreneur-led companies. Please welcome our star panelists, Maurice Ferré, CEO of Insight Tech and an Endeavor Miami board member, David Cummings, partner at Atlanta Ventures and an Endeavor Atlanta board member. Anna Mason, a great friend of Endeavor's, partner at Revolution's Rise of the Rest Fund, who Catalyst recently co-invested with in AppHarvest's 28 million Series C round to revolutionize agriculture in the United States and the world. And of course, our good friend, Brian Brackeen, general partner at Lightship Capital, an Endeavor entrepreneur, and a proud Endeavor Louisville board member. Scale up, go big, give back. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you, Jackson, for the introduction. And we're very excited to be part of this and get to this conversation. This is one of these conversations that as you go through this cycle of starting companies and living through them and being passionate about them, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in these situations where, what do you do next? I've done what I was supposed to do. I'm successful. I've made money. What am I supposed to do? And one of the beautiful things about Endeavor is that it really creates the platform. And everybody on this call, whether you're in the beginning of your journey, the middle of your journey, or at the end of the journey, I think what's relevant is to be thoughtful throughout the entire process and to be able to give, because there are many ways to give during the journey. You don't have to wait to the end of the journey to do it. So with that, we're going to get into a 45-minute conversation. And it's exciting that we have still a lot of people on the call, and we've heard some really great talks, and it's inspiring. And I just want to go around the table and just, or around the screen, so to speak, to have everyone introduce themselves. So Brian, why don't you kick it off and give us your introduction?
Sure. Brian Brackeen. I'm general partner of Lightship Capital. We're a venture capital fund focused on women and minorities in the Midwest and South. Also an Endeavor entrepreneur, as mentioned. So came into Endeavor through Miami and now serving in Louisville. CEO of a company called Kairos Facial Recognition AI firm, entered into Endeavor in 2014. I'm very, very focused on giving back to the communities both in Miami and the Louisville and the Midwest in general.
And Brian, we're going to be excited to hear how you kind of converted to the VC world, being a startup here in Miami. And in your world of artificial intelligence, and really looking exciting how we can, is from an inclusion perspective, bring in the Midwest. So I'm really looking forward to hearing some of these conversations, how we give back in that realm.
VC is way easier, way easier.
You can give us a little your background. Who also is just, I had the opportunity to talk to all three of you, and I just love, Anna, what you're doing and what you've done. And you got an amazing story. So, please.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to be here with everyone and to be on such a great panel. Sorry, I'm hearing a little echo. Hopefully everyone else is hearing it too. I am a partner at Revolution's Rise of the Rest seed fund. We are the earliest stage fund that's part of a larger family of funds based in Washington, D.C. We're led by our chairman and CEO, Steve Case, who's formerly well known as the co-founder and CEO of AOL. Like many youngest children, since we are the youngest child in this family of funds, we are perhaps the loudest and sometimes most boisterous in the family. And a lot of that has to do with our origin story that actually predates our fund. So we have $300 million under management, investing in early stage startups all across the country. But our brand, our mission, our mandate really dates back to 2014 when we launched these slightly crazy bus tours to visit in person ecosystems and startup communities all across the country. So I suppose I've buried the lead a little bit, but if I had to summarize our investment thesis, strategy, North Star in one sentence, I would say we see opportunity first through the lens of geography. By extension, I think what's important to note is that we really see opportunity and, I think find kindred spirits in many ways with so many founders and entrepreneurs who have been overlooked or underestimated, and by extension, we think undervalued, not only due to geography, but also due to their gender, their race, and just other factors that have kind of really taken folks outside of the mainstream of where venture dollars have been invested. Over the last, 10 or so years, 75% of venture capital has really been concentrated in three places: Northern California, New York City, and Boston. And our goal, our mission, our investment thesis is to really try to democratize access to investment capital. And we do that both by rolling up our sleeves and writing early stage seed checks, and also by visiting cities all across the country. So we've been to just under 45 cities in an official capacity on our tours. We're invested in 150 early stage companies across about 70 cities. And for me personally, I've been with the firm for about 5 years. I'm a recovering bond trader, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit later. I started my career just before the last Great Recession, and I would say that in many ways, I've spent a lot of time this year thinking most poignantly about how inspired and grateful I am to work in venture capital and to work alongside so many incredible entrepreneurs who are really just fundamentally optimists, realistic optimists, I would say, reimagining the future and figuring out how to make the impossible possible. And I navigated my way into this space actually first as a founder and entrepreneur myself, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Anna. As you heard Roger McNamee talk about the democratization and just bringing entrepreneurship and leveling the playing field of taking it out of San Francisco and Boston and the Triangle and bringing technology to mainstream mid-America, to the Miamis of the world. I think what you're doing, Anna, is just really, really amazing, and I'm really looking forward for having this conversation with you. So we'll now go to David. Maybe give us a little your background in Atlanta. It's one of the things that I was just amazed with is you also have come through a full circle and hearing your story and being involved with the whole process of even being part of one of the members of Endeavor Atlanta. So David, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Well, great. Thanks for having me today. I'm really excited. My background and my experience is really around starting a number of companies. Most of them have failed. I've been lucky enough to have a couple that have succeeded beyond my expectations. And so I'm really what I would call a parallel entrepreneur. I like to start ideas. I like to partner with co-founders, get businesses off the ground, and then figure out the next idea, figure out the next adventure. And so some in the past have included Pardot, which is one of the most popular marketing automation systems in the world, now owned by Salesforce.com. I was the co-founder of SalesLoft, which is one of the most popular sales engagement platforms. I was the seed investor in Calendly, which is one of the most popular schedule tools in the world. And I am the founder of the Atlanta Tech Village, which is a 100,000 square foot software entrepreneurship center in the heart of Atlanta. So I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm just really grateful. So thanks for having me.
So I'm going to start with you. I'm going to start with you, David, because when I hear a story and that really attracted was you've created over $1 billion worth of exits through and doing these 10 startup companies, and then all of a sudden, you're still a young guy, right? And here we are talking about funding, kind of after founding. So tell me, what was it that kind of got you going to start giving, and what advice do you give folks kind of in the process? Let's start by just saying you got people that are Endeavor folks on this call. How should they be thinking it at the early stage of how they should be thinking of giving back at this point in their lives?
So I'm a big fan of what Brad Feld was talking about earlier. Helping build community, starting meetup groups, doing roundtables with other entrepreneurs, learning from peers. I've been a member of EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, for a number of years. I've been a member of YPO, the Young Presidents Organization, for a number of years. And so my recommendation is to figure out how to start giving back as soon as possible. So even during my entrepreneur days with Pardot, we were hosting meetups in our office. We were participating in the community. We were participating in different accelerators around town, different venture Atlanta type programs. And so my recommendation would be that it's never too early to start. And the best place to start is really building a peer group, a group of other like-minded entrepreneurs that you can share ideas with, ideally in a confidential setting, like a forum. And so I would recommend starting out with EO or YPO as one of the best places on the peer side. And then I would recommend start giving back in the community as soon as possible.
Anna, I'm going to throw the question to you. Tell me how you're getting started. How should you, if you were to kind of go backwards and kind of in your early days, in your founding days, how would you advise yourself on how to give back?
Sure. I think it's +1 to everything David and Brad both shared. I think, advice I would give myself. First, I think it's incredibly important to surround yourself with community. I think there's building a business at any stage can just be incredibly lonely. And there's so much strength, I think, that founders have the opportunity to find in one another. And I think through that, there's a natural ability to give as much as you take. And it really just becomes this extraordinary symbiotic relationship. And I think built within that is sort of two sides of the coin, which is don't be, afraid to ask for things, in particular early on in the process. Finding yourself in the position where you think you might be the smartest person in the room is typically, I think, a pretty tough and ultimately counterproductive place to be as a founder. But on the flip side, don't sell yourself short, even if you're at the earlier stages of starting out, and know that you have probably a pretty fair amount to offer, even while you might be asking for some other things in exchange. And so I think finding your way into a community where you do have that, it really is that give first mentality of how can I lead in, how can I help, how can I support, is incredibly valuable. And I think pays dividends over the long term.
Thank you, Anna. Maybe Brian, why don't you take a crack at this? So you've gone through the cycle. How do you give advice on giving back at your stage?
So unfair to make me go after these guys, so, but because everything they said was absolutely true. I'm going to just kind of double click on something that David said about peer groups. We feel really very strongly in our work that those peer-to-peer mentorship is transformational. Oftentimes, if I am giving feedback or Anna or David is giving feedback to a founder, it's been so long since we were like a day one founder that some of the things that we're thinking about are from X number of years ago, right? But they ask each other like, oh, I'm looking to hire a CTO. And someone says, I just finished a search and I had these other 3 candidates that were actually pretty good. Why don't you talk to them, right? That's fresh. That's like usable and actionable. My wife started a meetup group in Cincinnati with just 11 friends helping each other in this way. And those 11 folks went on to raise over $100 million in the next 5 or 6 years or so. So it speaks to the power of peers and what you can do kind of with the tribe.
I want to move the conversation for a moment to, and I want to go back to David for a second. One of the things, David, that I found fascinating in terms of what you're doing is the way that you're giving back. Is you kind of like you started this company, was successful, then you started a couple more successful, and then you kind of moved out of that operating role, and you kind of said, well, you know what, I think I can spread the wealth here and take what I've done and build it. And not only have you built that ecosystem in Atlanta where you've been recognized nationally for, which is awesome, and more cities should be doing it. I hope we can do something like this. We're working on it. The Knight Foundation and Endeavor's working so hard to try to make that happen here in Miami. But you've kind of been kind of an anchor on that concept. But I'm really curious on the way that you've given back, and in terms of the funding side, is you've taken this approach of just like funding all these companies yourself, but also taking active roles in it. So it's just not the money that's coming in. So kind of talk to me a little about that model and how that's satisfying what you think is important in giving back after you've been so successful.
One of the things I learned about myself is that I like to start things, I like to get them off the ground, but I don't like to finish them. And so this idea that I can go and help entrepreneurs partner with them at day zero, help them come up with ideas, help them raise money, and then help be the best partner that I can to help them grow their business is something that's been really exciting to me. And I've had the opportunity to do it now for a little over 10 years. And so in hindsight, it was really about just figuring out myself, playing to my strengths. And really that's starting things and not finishing things. But of course, I got to surround myself with other people that like to finish things. And so for me, in terms of giving back, I felt like there was more entrepreneurs on the sidelines that if I could just believe in them a little bit more than they believe in themselves, we could actually go create some amazing companies. And I've been fortunate enough to see that happen now several times over. So I think sometimes just helping a potential entrepreneur believe in themselves, just that little bit extra, jump back into the arena, and it makes all the difference. So believing in entrepreneurs is something that I think is one of my superpowers.
David, I find it amazing. It's really cool when it's like everyone has their own ethos of like what works for them, and I think that's what makes everybody in this chat like unique and why we're here. We're here because we have a special type of DNA, and I think one of the things that is really critical, and it comes back is self-awareness. Of knowing your present, what you're good at, what you're not, and build on those strengths. And it seems to me that that's something that you've kind of emulated here, kind of on steroids. So I just find it amazing how you've been able to kind of navigate through that ecosystem and create that. Anna, on your side, amazing. When I hear these stories going from Wall Street, and then getting into companies, starting companies, and then all of a sudden getting into this whole world of like inclusion. Tell me how with Steve Case, you've been able to kind of, create this as a mission of yours now. And what advice do you give folks that kind of might need your services in terms of how you're thinking about these things on giving back?
Sure. Well, a couple core principles, really, foundational principles for Rise of the Rest that cut through the thread line, both of our programmatic work as we look to play a small part in lifting up ecosystems all across the country, and also now in how we think about not only investing in, but truly partnering with all the early stage startups we invest in. I think first comes down to partnership. And second, we use this term, we call it catalytic co-investment capital, or, when we're very into alliteration. So it's, can we connect and convene so we can catalyze, say that 5 times fast. But I think it's about multiplier effects. And, there's, obviously, folks talk about the power laws of investing in venture and what you really have to do to create those types of returns. And foundationally, it really comes down to the humility to know that there's quite a bit of capital out there in the market. I think the absolute numbers of dollars that have been invested into venture have quadrupled in the last 10 years. There are a lot of places where founders can access capital. And so you have to think about, the type of partner I think that you want to be, just as much, if not more so, than the type of investor that you want to be and that you hope that you are. One of my colleagues, said something a little while ago that has long resonated with me, which is that, we aren't in the investing business as much as we are in the services business. Because it really is our job, first and foremost, to just roll up our sleeves as much as we can after we write the check. And so a lot of what we index for, when we're working with companies and we're exploring opportunities and deals is, on one side of the equation, it's, our fundamental belief in the founder, the team, the market opportunity, and the general industry, and whether or not it's a space that we're investing in. But we also try to spend a lot of time and think about where and how we can be helpful, and can we really be impactful to this company, and can we help to be one of those accelerants that really catalyzes momentum. So we really encourage our companies to spend a lot of time thinking about partnership and what it'll look like and what it'll take to get from one step to the other. And it's increasingly a place where we're spending a lot more time and dedicating a lot more resources from an actual fund infrastructure standpoint to work as much as we can to help connect the dots with the founders. Sometimes it's tactical, sometimes it's strategic, sometimes it's network driven with where and how we can make introductions. But I think, for us, it all comes back to this foundation of partnership.
Anna, I know you've been very involved with the Endeavor Catalyst, which I think is just a brilliant way of inclusion. And I think just you have been kind of like one of those individuals that's kind of trailblazer, right? Whether you're on Wall Street and kind of being the woman there, or as you told me in your story of two female pregnant founders going in for money. Maybe just tell us a little about that story and how it's led you to kind of do what you're doing.
Sure. Well, that very much so.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot there, but I really want people to kind of get it.
No, that very much so, I think, is the punchline. It's a lot of what drew me to Revolution and to Rise the Rest and the work that we do, which I referenced in some earlier comments, which is about aligning and partnering with and backing founders who've been overlooked or underestimated and by extension really undervalued. And so much of what happens in so many industries, including our own, is the perception of reality. And I think what we all have to come up against. And I grew up professionally on Wall Street. I was for many years one of the only female traders on a distressed and high yield trading floor. And so I was immediately, just battling the perceptions of, little girl, in a boys' club, and to a great extent, actually developed a bit of a persona around it for many years that I almost moved into. And in the founder world, it was a real eye opener when my co-founder and I were the former federal prosecutor, I was a bond trader, and a couple years into our business, coincidentally and somewhat accidentally found ourselves both pregnant at the same time. And it was almost that punchline joke where, you female co-founders walk into a VC's office. Like, what do you think's going to happen there? And it really left a mark in terms of how I now, when I have the opportunity on the other side of the coin to think about constantly checking my own bias across the board whenever I'm meeting with founders. So all because, I am a woman who now has, check writing capabilities, and, I sit on our investment committee for our funds. It's just as important for me as it is for any of my counterparts, whatever they look like and whatever their backgrounds are, to be cognizant of my own bias. And I think that's having that empathy for the experience on the other side of the coin is definitely something that I hope continues to give me, humility and grounding in the process that we go through. I think the final piece, maybe just a little bit of tactical advice that I would offer to any founders who are on the phone. I encourage our founders, and in particular our female founders and founders of color, to not bury the lead on themselves and their expertise when they're pitching in a deck. Oftentimes I find very tactically that a team slide or a founder slide is at the end of the deck. And I always encourage founders to pull it right up to the front. If you deserve to be in the room, and put that right front and center. Don't be embarrassed to lean into it and explain the story of why you're the expert and why you are the person.
Brian, I think one of the things that is just so representative of what you're doing is you moved to Cincinnati, you're off to the races with this fund. Tell us a little about why this fund is so special.
Yeah, I think Anna and I's kind of thesis on these founders is probably very, very, very similar, if not identical. We look at the issue around what we call underrepresented founders. And so for the crowd, that means women of any color. And for us, it's people of color and then the disabled. This group is highly, highly, highly undersampled in their share of venture capital. So we know somewhere between 0.2 and 0.3% of all venture capital goes to a black people, right? And so there are all these amazing women that have skills, amazing businesses that aren't getting their share. And so our entire fund is focused on those groups in the Midwest and South. I'll give a quick shout out to the Midwest and South also by saying, if you were to put $1 anywhere in the map and figure out where that dollar should be invested, the Midwest and South are the number one in the country. It actually costs the least to build a great business at scale. It has the highest median exit value. So for every dollar you put in the Midwest to a company that exits, you get $5.17 back. Again, highest in the country. And the lowest amounts in the country, based on that same analysis, are in the Bay Area and the New York, Boston area, because it costs the most to create great businesses there, though you can have a great outcome. So we took this idea of geography and demography, and of course the industries that we knew best, and decided we're going to raise a $20 million fund around this area of focus. And as we sit here today, we're at $48 million in commitments. We're going to go all over to the 50 hard cap, and that's because I think what resonated was, again, the geography, the demography, the industries that we do well in the Midwest, and that everybody deserves a fair shot. I think that resonates with a lot of investors.
David.
Maurice, can you turn down the volume of your computer, please?
David, can you hear me? David, I wanted to ask you about the experience with Endeavor and how Endeavor kind of helps in terms of this equation of giving back, the multiple effect, if you will. Tell us how you think this kind of works.
Well, the great thing about Endeavor is that it brings together so many like-minded individuals, entrepreneurs, community members, investors, the whole 9 yards. And so for me, the Endeavor magic is really about taking an entrepreneur that's already doing great things and helping bring it to the next level. That next introduction to a potential investor, that next introduction to a potential customer, that next introduction to a new market, a new geography. And so really taking something that's already working, a business that's already scaling, and really adding the 10x effect to it. And so as an Endeavor board member in Atlanta, my goal is to help the Endeavor entrepreneurs be the best possible entrepreneurs they can be. And that always, always requires getting the help of others. And so Endeavor really just acts as this accelerant to bring other like-minded people together. And I think that's really the magic. That's really the special sauce for Endeavor.
And I'm going to jump in actually too on that front.
Please.
There's no shortage of resources out there for early stage startups, by industry, by geography, by affinity. And so much of it is concentrated at a very specific, very early stage. And I think one of the aspects that's long excited me about the work that Endeavor does, and I've seen it firsthand in many of the cities where we've collaborated, is that it elevates support at that next stage. And so to me, there's this sense of, I think across the startup support community continuum in the country, that you just you need tons of help when you're, when you're in your, corporate infancy. And then after that, it's just up to your investors and that's it. And you don't necessarily need the communal bear hug anymore. And, I'm the proud mom of two little girls, 5 and 2. And I, have sort of long said, or I guess for 5 years, I have said that, my kids are like startups and sometimes our startups are like kids. That has never felt truer than during the pandemic when the personal continuum has collapsed into itself. But I think with, to carry that metaphor through, kids need help at all stages of their lives, and it's different, but it's important. So that's, one of, I think the many reasons why I am so, impressed by Endeavor's work and love to, team up whenever and wherever we can.
So if we're just going to take over and go back to back, in Linda Rottenberg's book, she talks about crazy bean element, right? It's just something in an entrepreneur that looks at literally a situation that they should not be doing, like quitting some great job, cash in the bank, and then going out in this kind of huge endeavor, literally endeavor, to try to really change the world, change their communities. I'm sure people told David multiple times he was crazy in his life, right? And now he sits in this kind of beautiful home there behind you. So that doesn't bother us. But what we need to do with these crazy folks is keep giving them that bear hug that Anna just talked about. Keep loving on them, keep filling them with knowledge. Every single day in their path is new. Even if they've done something amazing, like last week, bought another company, great. But now they're the owner of 2 companies for the first time ever, right? So every single day, no matter what they've accomplished, is this kind of new challenge. And it's for us mentors in the world to help guide them through these challenges. We're called Lightship Capital. A lightship is a boat with a lighthouse on it, because it's helped to guide people to safe harbor and to give them the knowledge and the view that they need to be successful.
I could follow on.
I think with this I think we're gonna close here, and so I want to thank Brian, Anna, and David. You guys are all rock stars. It's just amazing how you guys are giving back, and I also just want to thank Adriana, and Claudia for the great work of putting this together. And I see on screen here our superstar Linda, and I'm excited to see the
Love
next
you
session
all.
here. It's been an amazing day.
Love the crazy shout out, Brian.
Amazing
Love all
day.
of you.
Always.
All right, so I'll pass it on. See you, Linda.